History, moments in time, turning points. It's very much now. It seems to be a sequence every 100 or 120 years that something big happens. You think of 1815 with the defeat of Napoleon, 1914 with the start of the First World War, obviously 1945, 1989, the fall of communism. And also another date which is relevant to us, the fall of the Roman Empire, which was in 476 AD when they had their last emperor and the whole thing crumbled apart. You can see that in the government we've got now with Starmer and co. Instantly unpopular, repellent politically, philosophically, and at every possible level. It shows in a way the system's contempt for the masses by putting in place a government of this nature. Previous image projections, people like Thatcher, for example, or Blair, or even David Cameron, had a certain look about them. They had a certain polish, they had a certain appeal to, the masses. That's obviously how they got elected and formed a government. You had Johnson, who was a bit of a buffoon, and then there's a sliding scale of political obscenity. You had Liz Truss. When she became Prime Minister, albeit briefly, I was looking on YouTube for some of her speeches, and a gentleman from Belgium commented, "Is she really your Prime Minister? I thought it was a Monty Python sketch." They couldn't believe that Britain had sunk that low to have someone like Liz Truss as Prime Minister. But alas, we've gone even lower because we've got Starmer now, who's essentially a systems man. There's nothing there. If he was going for an audition for a job at McDonald's or for a sort of West End theatre, you wouldn't employ him at any level. The eyes, the voice, the limited intelligence, no humour, very much a system man. Reeves, again, a robotic character. Yvette Cooper, a terrible Home Secretary. She learned a lot of her trade when she left college, and she served under Bill Clinton. David Lammy, no analysis required. I think we all know that. If I ever do a music hall one day, I'll just say his name and get applause again by that stage. It was good this summer that immigration again become a predominant issue, not just a issue or a side issue or something that's buried to one side, but become a major issue, actually for the first time since 1970, when again it was Enoch Powell who raised the issue. And he gave a very good speech that year. In fact, the speech he gave that year during the 1970 general election, I know it's 54 years ago, the speech was called The Enemy Within. If you ever get the chance to read that speech, go into it. It's a lot better than the Rivers of Blood speech. It's a lot more detailed, a lot more complex, but it explains so much. I do recommend it. But that was it. Normally the subjects that we want to talk about, the fundamental subjects, the important subjects, are suppressed. You get that in the world of broadcasting, where I can't remember any broadcaster speaking on behalf and in defence of ordinary British people. The only exception I can think of was in 2011, where a very well-known historian, who's on social media quite a lot these days, during the riots of 2011, on a fringe TV programme, noted that immigration exacerbates unemployment and lowers living standards of the British white working class. That was the only person who commented. With regards to parliamentarians themselves, the only member of parliament I can think of who defended the nationalist movement, and that was in 1977, in a brief exchange he had with the Home Secretary. But that's it. It's still very much immigration, race, and everything that goes with it is a suppressed subject. I can't remember whether there's ever been a serious documentary about British nationalism that's balanced and properly analytical, or even a drama or a comedy. Nothing at all. Again, the subject is suppressed. They don't want to talk about it. Reasons for this: fear of what we actually say, fear of authentic radical nationalism based on nature, reality, sociobiology, and backed by a comprehensive package of policies that will dramatically improve Britain and enhance our people. With regards to race attacks on whites, they never seem to happen or never seem to be officially recorded. Words bandied about by mainstream media and politicians are, for example, random or opportunistic, no apparent motive. But we know instinctively what is happening to our unfortunate people. We also know that the perpetrators of these heinous crimes are often sent to mental hospitals or mental institutions. In other words, the shutters come down. There is no trial, there is no discussion, there is no examination, no look into the motive. There is no why. They go into an Orwellian memory hole, never to be seen again. If you could compress all native Britons from, say, circa 1900 into one single person. The said person's life at times, especially recent times, has been disastrous, characterised by despair, when that life, all of our lives, should have been infinitely better, could have been different. Okay, from the 50s to the 90s, there were social, economic and technical aspects that improved life for all. But even those decades had the fundamental underlying problems of immigration and multiracialism, a decaying civic society, deindustrialisation, no gains from the two world wars, the genetic loss, the slump and depression of the 20s and 30s, crime, drugs, panoply of cultural obscenities, decline of British families and communities, and of course what used to be the race relations laws, which are now hate crime laws, which is an obvious oxymoron because crime is itself hateful. All of these essentially communistic laws dating back to 1965 need to be removed from the statute books. They're an affront to free speech, free thought, and an insult to us. Such laws are a physical and psychological weapon used against the native British people. Our regular rulers, not just passing governments, but the British establishment, the state, the system is made up of many elements, but their nucleus has a one world agenda, and that will be a one world government, which will be the ultimate tyranny. That is the game plan, with an emphasis on multiculturalism and the degrading and created impotence of leading Western nations. The tools for this rotten unnatural construction are the remorseless machinery of global plutocracy, money power, vested interest, and various groups of ideological aims. They've given us the poison gifts of internationalism, multiracialism, cultural decay, and endless debt. The rulers of the world, certainly the Western world, may seem impotent at times, but they're human and they will make errors, they will make mistakes, similar to a James Bond villain, with a grandiose, complex secret schemes to rule the world, schemes guaranteed to cause mass misery and destruction, but also at the same time, a lot of those schemes will fail. Or to quote the old Prussian General von Moltke, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. Our mission is to alert our people, not only in Britain, but throughout the West, that urgent political action must be taken. The events of the past summer, sub judice of course, in Kent and London, where I live in Southend, Southport and Leeds, are potentially a taste of what happens unless the politics of the last 80 years are not reversed. Permanent and infinite trauma. Some on our side in the British political arena have commented that the nationalist movement of, say, the last half century has been a complete failure. I totally disagree. Certainly nationalism should have made more progress, should have made more impact. Our ideology and our policies are popular, but we have made breakthroughs at certain points. And always remember that what we are, thousands of ordinary British men and women with minimal funding and scant resources, often facing physical danger and psychological terror, with no mainstream media to promote us, have managed in 3 periods of recent history to achieve things. In the 1970s, the nationalist movement pushed the issue of race and immigration to the top of the British political agenda, and equally important, created across the country a nationwide network of branches and groups that in part still benefits us today. From my own personal experience, the little nationalist rebellion that we had in East London in the early 90s not only highlighted housing issues for native British people, but also provided a political link between the 70s and the first decade of this century. And as we know, the third period of success was under the BNP. That first decade, the 21st century period of sort of 2002, 2009. And with the skills we had acquired with community-based politics, ensured numerous nationalists were elected as local councillors, and at the end of it got 2 MEPs as well. Again, these successes brought immigration and Europe not only to the attention of British voters, but also, this is important, to the elements of the establishment who may be enlightened or even sympathetic. It always sometimes seems that we've not made the impact we should have done, but believe me, we have, even though at times the effects seem invisible. We did at times provide a political and cultural pushback. The British Democrats are operating to long-term plans, coherent, progressive, sinking political roots, winning parish council elections, which will lead to district council elections as well, creating real community for ethnic Britons, a survival mechanism for our people, an alternative structure of power, a microstate, retaking our country piece by piece, with intelligence, peacefully, legally, politically, as always. And politics isn't always about instant excitement. Often it is boring, hard work. But the ancient Christians, when the Roman Empire fell, realised this. Sometimes you'd have to do very boring hard work to get anywhere. Patience, persistence, working to spread the message and recruit. A lot of street protests, public flag waving activities, and I've taken part in a lot of them myself, serve a useful visual supplementary purpose, but no more than that. Purely on their own, such activities become a rather impotent political activity. We need a multifaceted approach based on acquisition of power, not begging those in charge to change political direction. As I said, we have got a number of things we're working on. Apart from the elections, we're looking at going through the database of old or lapsed members to contact them to see if they wish to join the British Democrats. We're looking at a newsletter that we can use on doors when we're canvassing, particularly of our parish council elections. I sent out a few emails to foreign nationalist groups over the last month or so and was quite surprised with the response. There's a group in Australia called Australia First, and they said, yes, we've heard of your party and you seem to be doing okay, and we approve a lot of your ideas, and there was an exchange of literature. A gentleman from New Zealand who contacted Mike, and then I got his email and had a dialogue with him. He's a retired professor of philosophy. He's heard of us as well, so I was quite pleased with that because that is the farthest end of the earth. I wrote to a French group who do a lot of intellectual, philosophical stuff. I made the mistake of writing to them in English, which means they totally ignored me. So I had to go on Google Translate, put it all in French, and then they did reply, and they said, yes, we've heard of your group as well. But obviously I had to do it in French because they're very particular with the language, which I understand. It's part of their cultural heritage and in a way part of ours. The way forward now, let's examine current factors. A singular political party needs to be part of something larger, something wider, what you might call a political sea to swim in, areas where there are advantages and opportunities. At present, excuse me a moment, this comes in the shape of reform, who I personally despise. Reform is a political hologram. There is no substance, there's no philosophy behind them, and certainly no progressive economic policies that will benefit ordinary British people. Nothing with regards to national identity. They won't deliver on immigration, and eventually, despite all their success at the moment, they will fizzle and fade. But they have inadvertently provided that sea to work in. This opens up opportunities for us with elections and with campaigning and recruitment. And also another aspect of political change. A central component of genuine political revolutions is the breaking down of the establishment structures, political fragmentation of voting patterns, and masses shunning the system. A system that doesn't provide order, prosperity, satisfaction or hope. Some elements within the system, and I'm talking about civil servants or professionals or other people who have positions of power and influence, must look with horror at the present state of Britain. Obviously, there's parts of the establishment, certainly those of a liberal or Marxian socialist mind, will hate us instinctively, ideologically. Some are indifferent, they may not even know that we exist. Many are fair, unbiased, balanced, and there will be a small, significant element that may even be sympathetic to nationalism. And nationalist-orientated political revolutions can happen when decent patriotic souls within key areas of British society decide to cross the Rubicon and not turn back. But only when they see emerging a credible political, cultural alternative, and that must be us. When we've convinced influential people, sympathetic individuals and groups, to make the political group, they will become crucial elements of our struggle. Hence the need for the British Democrats to work on concrete, feasible lines. There isn't a benign god of politics, a spirit, a genie in a bottle, a miracle, a mirage, something that must turn up, something that rescues the ancient British nation and our depressed, crushed, momentarily defeated people. The heroes and heroines of the near future in the country will be little people, ordinary people. And if we intend to find those political warriors battling, resisting for the British nation, if you want to really find them, without exaggeration, simply look in the mirror. Yes, that is a reality. It's us. Think of that scene in the classic British film Zulu, just before the battle, where the very young, naive private asked the colour sergeant, "Why us, Sarge? Why us?" And the colour sergeant replies, "Because we're here, lad, and there's nobody else." And that is very much the case with us. Again, without exaggeration, without hyperbole. It is us, British nationalists, and that will always be the way until things really turn around. There's only us in the battlefield, politically, of course. Fortunately, there are real cracks appearing in the system. Our rulers can't deliver anything positive. The forces of normality and nature represented by us are fighting back, including the key area of political language. Political language has, of course, been dominated by a long time by liberals and cultural Marxists, with an ism for every subject they wish to subvert and destroy. Obviously, one of the words was immigration. They turned it into migration. They made it a softer word. Sounds like birds migrating from one continent to another in the David Attenborough Nature Programme. Well, no, it's immigration and it's migration and it's invasion to some extent. The word racialism, which means a concern for your own people, it certainly was in the 1960s and thereabouts, has been shortened to racism. Two-syllable word, quite pejorative. But then again, you can say it's not racism, it's my cultural choice. I prefer to be with my own people. Everyone in the world lived like that before and shall live like that in the future. With regards to economics, they use another ism, which is protectionism. So if you've got a vital industry or a certain thing that is unique to your economy, protectionism is, for them, offensive. You should be involved with free trade. But that's not the case. That's being insular and looking after our home-based economics, our honest economics. Again, an area that we need to battle in is the area of language, to turn it around. But particularly with that word migration, which is particularly offensive and misleading. Words have no innate meaning. They only mean by what we understand by them. We should never let our political and cultural enemies gain control completely of the essential mechanics of language. And also, while we're talking about language, try, where possible, to discard the terms left and right. Marine Le Pen summed this up recently, where she said you're either a globalist or a patriot. And we can say the same. You either believe you're a citizen of the world or believe that you're a British nationalist and part of European civilization. Or you're a patriot or you're an internationalist. The frantic assaults on our nation, people and identity by the globalist government and media have been accelerated because they know now, especially with events and things are getting interesting, time is against them. The peoples of the West are aware and awakened to what's happening to them. I'd like to quote from, odd one, a Welsh nationalist, Saunders Lewis. I'm a British nationalist, but a lot of his views, particularly on economics and aspects of cultural heritage as well, coincide with ours. And there are also things that go into our cultural and ethnic roots. They go deep into the soul and soil of nations. This is what Saunders Lewis said about nationalism. There is nothing like the sense of belonging to a noble country and to courageous ancestors for inspiring youth to heroism. Nationalism is above all a fountainhead of heroism and of brave resolve. It gives a beaten people hope. It gives them resourcefulness and drives away apathy and cynicism and selfishness. It rouses them to cooperation and it kills obstruction and the spirit that says no. Wonderful words from Saunders Lewis. And the youth under 30 are now realising this, especially if you look at media and advertising, when the most demonised and simultaneously ridiculed member of society, certainly in Britain, is normally a white working class male, portrayed often as a loser facing a deserved extinction. This will create a backlash, but it must be channelled legally, intelligently, through politics. And not only for that demographic, but for all native Britons, we can offer real radicalism and ideology. Because the nation state is an ark, our ark. Without it, we're nothing. We're meaningless creatures in an amorphous global village. We need the cultural choice of an ethno-cultural state, being with your own people. The Greek writer Euripides said there is no greater sorrow on earth than the loss of one's own native land. We need stable population with honest economics, where money, a mere token, and the economy itself are subservient to the people. We need the creation of a private sovereignty where a population is properly housed, incomes that are not subject to the whims of global economics, worker participation in the management of industry, and always protect our farming and fisheries. And above all, a sense of belonging, a purpose, and an assurance that the Western world will survive and prosper. The post-1945 world of globalism, multiculturalism, laissez-faire economics will dissolve and European nation-states will re-emerge based on nationalism, sociobiology, common sense and gut instincts. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was out leafleting with an old nationalist comrade of mine and we was walking up this road and the road forked off into 2 directions. And he said, just for amusement, he said, if you go up that road there and you're back here, but if you go up that road and you're back in, say, 1975, which I remember, what would you do? And initially it was tempting that you think, yeah, I might go back in time. Oh, I can't do this again. I don't really want to do this anymore. This is a horrible world. And there is that temptation, the sense of escape, the sense of nostalgia. But as we know, in reality, we can't go back. And besides, there's no room anyway, because all of our ancestors are behind us, all the way back to the Ice Age. That's where a lot of British ancestors go back to. And they're urging us forwards into the political furnace. So don't worry too much about the next general election or personal timescales. Always think in terms of eternity. We should enjoy the challenges facing us, chance to do heroic things. Each and every active nationalist for the last 100 years has played a part in our history, in our struggle, even at a subatomic or micro level. Contributions in election campaigns, distributing political literature, educating the British public. And as mentioned, the 70s, the 90s, the 2000s, we punched above our weight with sacrifice and struggle. Whatever the faults of this party and nationalism generally, we are the only alternative for our people. Our mission is their survival, their salvation. We will recreate and rebuild Britain. We're not idle witnesses observing our own oblivion and destruction, but political pioneers who disregard temporary comfort and safety first. We energise our minds, bodies and souls against the disaster of our recent history and march towards our eventual triumph. A triumph that will see a new revived Britannia, cities, towns, countryside restored to what they should be, and the collective trauma and horrors of the last 50 years will fade, be erased. Pride restored, children safe, honour, hope, victory will be ours. Thank you.